Welcome back yet again, ladies and gentlemen, for the final lap. And starting us off on this final part of the day is my colleague and a very close colleague. We work together in the Nuffield Foundation. There I've declared my conflict of interest. Sharon Witherspoon. And earlier on today, you heard something about the activities that ESRC has been funding of considerable academic importance and hopefully practical importance. Sharon's going to say something about that. And I just wanted to pay personal tribute not only to ESRC staff and the Higher Education Funding Council for England staff, but especially to Sharon, who has led the Q-STEP initiative and transformed it into potentially one of the most important developments in quantitative skills in the UK for many a long year. Sharon.
Thank you, Dave. Well, I have to say I'm delighted to be here, and I should confess I've known Keith more years than I want to admit to. So when he asked me to take part in this session, one of the questions I had is, how can we stop it being a whinge fest? How can we stop it from being a set of moans, but to go on to something positive? So that's my aim for this session. But of course, I can't resist starting with a bit of a moan. How many of you have seen the OECD report or seen the newspaper coverage of the OECD report about the status of UK numeracy skills? It was published, I think it was yesterday. Hands up. Okay, that's virtually everybody. How many of you were deeply surprised by the findings? Not many. And I think that tells us something. So I'm going to canter through what we think we know. I do have to say I've had a quick look at the OECD report. What's unusual about it is it covers the entire adult population. So it's not just school leavers. So it's able to compare, young people with older people. I don't know yet how robust that sampling is and all the other things that we survey statisticians worry about. But the other thing that's unusual is it starts with an objective skills test. Here's a problem, solve it. And it gives people time to do that. And that's quite unusual because you're not then comparing particular qualifications, which is part of what I'm going to go on to talk about to do. So the next, Nuffield Foundation, we give away money. That's a great job to have. We try to use it to achieve good things. And we've had a long history of engagement, not only in social problems from a very tough-minded, evidence-based approach, but also about science and maths education for many, many, many years. And in fact, when I usually tell someone I don't know at all that I work for the Nuffield Foundation, a lot of people nod and say, Nuffield physics, Nuffield chemistry. So we do have a long reputation there. A few years ago, about 3 years ago, we published a report called Is the UK an Outlier? And that report was one of the first to actually go through all the advanced industrial countries, as well as some growing countries like South Korea and so on, and show just what a low proportion of UK students, secondary school students, do anything that might be thought to be at all to do with number. I'm choosing that phrase carefully, so it's the widest possible definition. And fewer than a quarter of UK students who stay in A-level, so they're staying in education, went on to do anything. We updated that more recently, in fact, in January of this year. All these materials are available on our website, which looked at post-16 mathematics and updated those figures. They haven't really changed, but also looked at what it is that other countries do, so that they're not, and part of the problem, of course, and I know I have an American accent, but I have been here 36 years and I am British. And I think the key thing is we have very early specialization. And that means a lot of people just drop out of anything quantitative at age 15 or 16. And that's quite unusual. And so you can see that if you look at that report, what we show is we looked at people post-16 who do any mathematics, and again, this is mathematics not as in what a mathematician would call mathematics, but anything that might involve number and quantity and symbol. And we see, look at that ranking of countries from Hong Kong down to England, and we do look at Scotland and England separately, different school systems. Any, and the red warning light comes on. And then if we look at the proportion doing advanced mathematics, it's also low. So, you know, what we in Germany, but at least they've brought more people up to some universal level. So England stands out as being really very, very low on these issues. And in case you want a sense of numbers, those are the numbers that go with those figures. So again, that's all available on our website, that you can actually see a very small proportion go on to do advanced mathematics, that's A-level maths. So that's first set of findings. Second set of findings, well, what about the math, stats, data handling content in other A-levels? One of the problems in the UK is these things get put off in a silo into A-level maths, as opposed to saying, what about psychology? You know, we should be teaching t-tests. What about geography? Why aren't we teaching some of these statistical techniques? So one of the things that we did in conjunction with a group here at the Royal Society that was doing this for chemistry and physics was to actually look at the mathematics content of geography, sociology, psychology, economics. And I won't go again through all the detailed findings, but what that finds are two things. All right, economics is better than psychology, is better than geography, is better than all the rest of the social sciences at having anything to do with numbers in the A-level syllabus. But given that most of these exams, you might have the choice of 2 or 3 exam boards for examinations, a key question in terms of what's taught is what is examined. And if I say to you that you can take a syllabus in sociology in which you only need to use anything remotely connected with a number, and it will only give you 2% of your marks for that grade, I think you can see that even if it's ostensibly available in the textbook or in the curriculum, if the examination result only depends on it for 2% of the grade, you're not going to get many people teaching to it. That's not how education works. So this raises a lot of questions for us, and I'll talk about it at the end, about how you actually make sure that we drive up mathematics content more generally, not just in A-level maths. And the reason for that is because we really have to take more of a pathways approach. In any of the work that you do, in any of the social statistics I used to do, you never start with just a cross-section. It's how are we going to get more people in? How are we going to get, we need to understand a dynamic process. And so we're saying there is a pipeline. It starts at school. We have worries already about GCSE at school. We have for too long said, well, let's just deal with it at A-level maths level and not thinking about AS level. One of the things that this government's doing, which we are worried about, although we welcome many of the steps they're taking, is to actually say AS level is no longer something you can take and then change your mind and go on to do what's now called A2s at maths, A-level maths. So they will keep an AS level in maths, but we think it's quite important that can be a tool of seduction to get people to realize that taking that next step into A levels is perhaps not so frightening. Certainly AS levels, the proportion of students taking them in maths have been rising, and we want to see that continue. We want to see more content in other A levels. That's absolutely vital. We want to see better data handling skills. This isn't just coding, this is mapping, this is playing with data. And we think actually that's a way of attracting young people. And that, by definition, is more likely to be interesting if it's about problems, about issues. It's not let's learn the central limit theorem by doing it. It is how do we solve a problem. And finally, one thing we welcome is just this week, again on Tuesday, and I'm sure it was timed with the OECD announcement in mind, have been a set of new maths qualifications that something called ACME, again headquartered here at the Royal Society, has been working on to actually bring in new post-16 maths qualifications which do include statistics and data handling as a significant part. And the aim is to gradually ratchet it up so that it's expected that all students do one of those qualifications. And you have a role to play in that. There are problems about teaching capacity in school. We don't have enough teachers who feel comfortable themselves enough with the math to make it fun for the kids. I mean, that is probably the next big step. and then the follow through to university. Well, there we have given each of you in your pack a little booklet about Q-STEP. This really is hot off the presses. We only announced who had got the Q-STEP funding on last Thursday. So it's a very carefully designed program which starts with the 15 centres we are funding, but it starts with them in the context of saying, you will all look different. Some of the centres, 2 of them in fact, are both to do with GIS and various geography issues, one at UCL and one at St Andrews. Others run the range of a couple of disciplines. They might have criminology and political science. Others run across the whole gamut, from psychology to sociology to geography to whatever. Each of them have to be making steps to think about recruitment of school students. Part of what we want to do is amplify the signal that's going out to secondary school level, which says, keep taking some maths, keep taking some maths. Some of them will have a very advanced stream of training, so that the aim is not just to lift everybody's skills, but to lift the skills of a particular subset of students who are really interested, dare I say, geeky, actually to really involve them in things. And we've set out very clearly why we're doing what we're doing and why this pipeline matters. £19.5 million, that's money from us at the Nuffield Foundation, the ESRC, and HEFGE for English universities. The applications were so good, we'd originally only set aside $15.5 million, but both we and the ESRC came up with extra money, so that, I think, tells you how committed we are. It will create 53 new university posts who are quantitatively skilled, but in particular social science areas. So we hope that is part of creating a critical mass to change things. They'll all be labelled Q-STEP, as here. I won't go into the detail. You'll find in your pack the presentations. We've tried to give you just a sense of the disciplines, and quite a few of them actually have a pipeline into an advanced master's course, or 4th undergraduate year. So the aim is we really do want some of these to be building up our skills. Well, that's all fine. We could rest on our laurels and say we've done our part, but that's not what our aspiration is. That's not what our aim is. Our aim is not only to produce a cadre of students from those universities. Each of the universities has had to commit themselves to keeping those staff on for a further 5 years beyond the funding. So in essence, they have become permanent posts. We have kick-started them, but the university has committed themselves to that. But we also want, first of all, within these 15 centres, and then more broadly, working with a lot of unfunded centres of excellence, to deepen links with schools and exam boards to say math skills is too important to be left to STEM students. We do need a lot of people with different worldviews and different skill sets to have these skills, and we're only going to do that if the exams and the curricula at school level start making it clear that that's important. We've got to ask ourselves questions. Have we got school policy right, particularly about AS level? I mean, we at the Foundation are very clear we'd like to see AS level numbers in maths improving, or statistics, because there is an AS in statistics, an A level in maths improving, these new qualifications improving, and the quantitative content of these other A levels. We think we run ourselves a scheme of work placements at school level, focusing on the less advantaged schools, but schools where there's a real commitment to science and maths education. And so we're always looking to improve the number of summer work placements that we can offer to bright young school kids to say, this is exciting, this is fun. We worry about the general signaling, and one of the purposes, and I won't hide it, for the thinking about the more interactive approach that we'll next take is to actually get you to think about anything you or your company or people you know can do. So that's the end of my presentation. I think next up is Jan Gordon Wilson, who's going to be talking about a particular scheme run at Portsmouth.
Sorry, Sharon. Are you going to do your question?
I'll do that after Jan's
Sharon.
finished.
Thank you.
Okay.
Hello everybody, my name's Sian Gordon Wilson and I'm from Portsmouth Business School from the University of Portsmouth. So I just wanted to update you all on conversations that I was having with Boots a couple of months ago, particularly Martin Squires, who were saying that specifically at Boots, there's a problem of retaining analysts. Analysts come, they work for a couple of years, and their skill set increases at a quicker level than they're getting paid. So as a result of that, they're losing these analysts. And from that evolved a potential MSc in Insight Management, which we're still in talks with Boots about. And this MSc had two particular objectives. One was to actually improve the staff retention of analysts, and the second was to offer analysts a career development program. And this was consisting of both customer insights and also broader commercial exposure. Before then, they would embark in their career to a more supervisory promotion. So the structure of this MSc was a 3-year in-company part-time MSc, and it would be for those who had 1 or 2 years successful experience. The MSc would be specifically tailor-made to actually fit the company's requirements, to fit the company's business case. So it wouldn't be a one-type master's that would fit every other type of organisation. And the fees would be actually paid by the company, but this would be under the conditions that if the analysts left within 2 years post-completion, then they would have to pay back the course fees. All teaching would be done face-to-face and in teaching blocks actually at the company's site, and there would be a form of online support available for those on the masters in the form of tutorial support or library e-resources as well. And then following discussion, this would take 6 months to set up, and this would consist of 3 months to actually agree what the course detail actually was, and then a further 3 months for quality approval and to actually, for us at Portsmouth, to actually develop all the teaching materials as well. So just an example of how this MSc in Insight Management would look, which was specific to Boots. Well, year 1 would be all about flexibility, and this is because we recognise that the analysts are very specialist in one area of customer insight, and then this would all be about enabling the cross-resourcing to actually meet the peaks, and this would be in the form of development. So by doing this, it would be about providing the analysts with all the tools and techniques to actually be professionals within their chosen field. And ways that this could, what this would consist of would be updating the analysts with the most current and up-to-date techniques. It would consist of 2 units. Perhaps one could be in data collection, the other one could be in data analysis. So when we're looking at data collection, we're looking at things like consumer behaviour, we're looking at digital marketing, for example, or even about marketing trends. If we're looking at data analysis, we're looking specifically at data analysis or web analytics or data mining or other statistical analytical methods as well. So it is all about producing your results and presenting them both efficiently and effectively. Then the understanding and the background behind year 2 was all about reputation. So this is because we believe that many analysts would do a better job if they actually understood more fully the business value of their work, both internally and externally. So what this actually does is it links to stakeholder engagement. So in terms of the units here, one unit could be potentially in decision support for business strategy. So it would be how their actual role impacts customers, both internally and externally customers. It may be using finance to present different business cases, or it may even be about understanding the company's strategies and competitor strategy. The second unit of this, of the year 2, could also be about a professional practice unit as well. So this would be all about the coaching and development, all about leadership and management, or even about developing people in business. And then finally, the rationale behind year 3 would be about a work-based project, which is really about encouraging implementation of best practice innovation in the company. So then this would be application. So it's using everything that's been taught in the previous 2 years to actually apply and do a live issue within the organisation as well. So as I said, this particular example has been tailor-made to actually fit Boots, but here at the university we actually do have experience with in-house master's programs. We've worked with companies such as the Royal Air Force, HP, the NHS and Vesta businesses as well, and we've had some really good testimonials. Okay.
So I think Keith thought that would be useful as a kind of example of a postgraduate course. Let's see, I don't know if I can get some of my slides back on, please. But from my point of view, and I think the Q-STEP point of view, I think what we're looking for is, let's see if I can move this over, is to say, you all are an incredibly scarce resource, and I know you've got your day job, and many of you are working. I mean, you can already see the examples of the work with Southampton and UCL and so on. But we do have a set of issues that require a lot more signalling and heft and push. It's not enough to say to government, will you get your A-levels sorted out, will you get teaching? I mean, they need to, and as I said, to my mind, and I think to the mind of my colleagues at the foundation, the teaching capacity at school level, particularly secondary school level, is a big problem, because it's a symptom of the problem we're trying to solve, that we've got such a shortfall. We chose the undergraduate in social sciences because we care about social sciences, but also because we thought we can use that to do this signaling. And that's partly because we are running a support program where we are going to be pulling together not only the 15 centres, but the learned societies in some of these disciplines, some other centres of excellence in geography and in psychology, to say, why aren't you taking part in discussions of A-levels? We are going to be looking for work placements, and we will be running, and my colleague Sarah Locke, who I think many of you've met and has done a lot of the heavy lifting on Q-STEP, we will be running a central clearinghouse for undergraduate work placements for people, so that we can try to give people, we will be paying stipends. We're expecting the workplaces to put in a bit of staff time to help them, but it's actually partly just saying their jobs here, they're interesting jobs. We're talking to market research firms, we're talking to government, we'll be talking to analytics firms, we'll be talking to retail firms, we're talking to a lot of places and saying, you know, these are things you might want to think about, and offering this up to some sort of competition in a variety of ways. So the thought behind the questionnaire that you all have in your pack is that you should talk to the people at your table. I think I've set out, without putting artificial tick boxes, some notion of what some of the questions might be. One of the questions we have is the importance of what you might call math skills versus the importance of statistics versus the importance of data handling. And I think that's an area where the general educational establishment might be a bit slow. So it would be interesting to have views about that. We've asked you some specific questions to the extent you know them about school level work. And then there are questions about whether you or your unit or your firm can actually think about work placements for school students post-16, these are 17 and 18-year-olds, who can think about university student placements, can think about going to visit local schools. Well, incredibly important to get this message out at school level or at groups of school level. And any other comments that you have, we're asking you to put your name and organization on it. I think Keith and I have undertaken between us to analyze these from the point of view of what did you think the big issues were, and we will feed that back to you sometime after the conference. But if you do put your name and address on it and you volunteer to do something, then you can look forward to an email or a telephone call from someone, because if we can involve you, we will want to involve people who are really doing this. And particularly if you're recruiting new staff, it's actually really good to get young people going back to universities and going into schools and saying, this is what I'm doing. So I think we've got about 10-15 minutes before the 10 minutes before the session ends. So may I invite you to talk with your table, and then we'll collect these at the end of the day. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you filled in all the 11 boxes. And are we going to collect them now, or are we going to collect them at the end? Keith?
Collect now, collect at the end. What do you want to do? Do you want to collect them now, or collect at the end? I think people will hand them in at the end.
Right. No one gets to leave. No one gets a drink unless they hand these in afterwards. Right. Now then, Keith insists that I say a few words by closure, although we have some awards, don't we? And my understanding is that I speak now for a very brief period, hand over to you, and then I get back because I've got one final thing to say. Okay. You can see we're making this up as we go along. It's been a real pleasure being here today. I've learned lots of different things, and I shall go away and investigate them all now. It's clear that analytics, to an extent that we could scarcely have contemplated 5 years ago, are now pretty center stage for many of our activities. And that's despite a number of difficulties, challenges that we might as well acknowledge insofar as thinking about the working together of university people, university researchers, and commercial organizations. And the first thing is that it would be stupid to deny that there are, in the main, different drivers. Max Kelly emphasized in characteristic ebullient form this morning the profit motive and how critical that was. Most academics would argue that they're there to try and get greater and deeper, perhaps infinite, understanding of the processes and societies. So there are two different sets of drivers. Of course, it's not as stark as that, but there are some real differences. Different timescales. The answers that I imagine a number of businesses would like to particular problems, especially operational ones, would be quite near term, whereas academia is nothing like as long as it used to be. I mean, it used to take many people in the humanities 10 years to create a monograph. Nowadays, of course, you've got 1-year master's courses, PhDs are somewhat longer, and undergraduate dissertations can be done much more quickly. But there is something of a time gap in the elapsed time which makes some sense to people. And then, of course, there's a question about big data, which is it really about instant gratification, or is it hype, or where are we in the middle? But despite all of this and different views on these in the two communities, it is working. It is clear the success of a meeting like this today and the examples that we've heard about demonstrate that there's a much closer working together between academia and the commercial sector than we've ever seen before. So that is great. If I have one other point before passing on to another thing, it is that this sort of gathering and the people who are here, the interactions seem to be in rude health. I wonder whether that permeates all the way up through organizations. I was at a dinner the other night with a couple of people who were FTSE 100 CEOs. Their knowledge of all of these things was pretty rudimentary, but they were absolutely happy to acknowledge that the greatest problem they had was hearing sensibly from experts in the midst of their companies, that upward communication was often strangled or at least filtered by people before it got to them. So I just do wonder, Keith, whether there is some mechanism or some thought that we might have about trying to get a clutch of CEOs together to talk about the sorts of issues that we've been talking about here. So that was serendipity. It was a good dinner, by the way. And the final thing, really, before handing over to Keith, is that, as it happens, we are in the midst of an activity, all of us, that is enormously relevant to the agenda today. And I talk, of course, about the future, if I can use these words, the future of the population census, the most widely used open data set in the UK. And for those who don't know about it, there has been a great deal of research being carried out by the Office for National Statistics on possible alternatives to the mechanism that's been going on since 1801. And at this very moment, there is a consultation out, which I guess many of you know about, but I suspect some don't, about two options for going forward. And they relate very closely to many of the things that have been discussed today. And again, Max is here. I saw him a moment ago. Max offered to take a bet that we wouldn't end up with a conventional census. I think he just said a census. I'm not so sure that's right, Max, but that's one of the questions of the consultation. And I'd like to ask Alistair Calder to come up here and say a few words about the consultation in the hope that we can get some more feedback from you and contribute to this extremely important event. Alistair is a very senior player in the Beyond 2011 group, which is in ONS and which has been working very hard on the alternatives, and he's going to tell us all about them now.
Thank you very much. I'm not very senior, senior enough perhaps. So David offered me a free advert, and as you commercial folk know, you never turn down a free advert, so I said yes. As he says, we're right in the middle of a consultation. Well, we're not. We're right at the start of a consultation, and we're very, very open to discussion with people. We started a consultation a couple of weeks ago. Essentially, there's two ways that things might go. Essentially, a census quite similar to what we've done before, but with a lot more electronic element, a lot more online element, or a method that uses much more admin data, filling in the gaps with surveys, essentially. I'm not going to say anything about that, really, other than to say there's a note in with your packs, and I would urge you to go and have a look at it. If you're in this room and you think, oh, that could be relevant to me, I can promise you it is relevant to you, and I'd urge you to go and have a look at it and think about it, and please respond to us. If you're in this room and you think, I don't think that's relevant to me, you're wrong. It's dead relevant to you, and you should go and have a look at it. It's so important, this. It's fundamental to statistics. If you're giving out any bets on the way that this is going to play, or if you haven't looked at it yet and you think you know the answer, you know what, you're wrong. I don't know the answer. We've been working on this for 2 years. It's extraordinarily complex, and it needs thinking about, and it needs talking about. And we're dead up for talking to anybody about it. We particularly want responses and discussion with people who we've not talked to before. It's really important, this, and I'd urge you to go and look at it. I wanted to finish, though, as a lot of people have done, with some thanks. I've been lucky enough, Doug and the Doug group and Keith have allowed me to join in with their meetings, all of their meetings this year. It's been brilliant, enormously useful. It's one of the most positive kind of engagements we've had. Because I've found out a lot about the way that the commercial world thinks, more than I've known before. And also, I don't want to use pretentious words, but we've kind of done a bit of the journey together. We've kind of learned some stuff together, which has been really useful. So I'd like to thank Keith and Doug for that opportunity. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Alistair. Just by way of slight amplification, the two options that are out there, and there's many more details included. One is an electronic form of census, approximately, and the other one is primarily based upon use of administrative data from various sources. So it has something in common with what we've been discussing earlier on today. Yeah, and like Alistair, I urge you to fill in your consultation form. We are genuinely open to all the suggestions you're likely to make. And just before I hand over to Keith, David Martin, who spoke earlier today, is a great expert in census-related matters, and especially in the research domain. David, do you want to add something to what's been said?
Unprompted advert version 2. Doug members, the reason why this might matter if you haven't got into it. I have worked for a very long time with ONS on the small area census data sets, the workplace data, the output areas, the statistics for them. At least one of the options will not deliver that data ever again because it's not designed in such a way that would be able to create output area level socioeconomic data. No oak. Not quite sure about IMD, certainly no detailed demographics at the OA level. Another one of them produces a route which might get you there, but in a way that we don't really understand what the biases are. Now, ONS have been doing masses of work on how to get there with this to produce these options. I don't want to tell you which is the right answer. I'm not even sure which is the right answer, but don't pretend that you will maybe be able to come back later and say, stupid government, you made the wrong choice, if you haven't got involved in it now. Meeting at the RGS, Monday week, the 21st, where David is chairing for us. Keith will be speaking for you on what the consequences for small area geography data are. So if you're around and you're interested in that, it's on the RGS website. But certainly don't let the consultation pass you by.
Good. Thanks very much, Alistair and David. Now, over to Keith, nearly there.
Yeah, I was just thinking, we live in such exciting times, don't we? Beyond 2011 and big data and open data, it's better than being a dentist or something like that. It really is. The presentation of the Doug Award, or this time it's the Demographic User Group Awards. We have 2 this year, and some of you will be aware that we started giving awards in 2005. And this was, in general terms, the group's award for better information, and past, I call them alumni or whatever, University of Leeds and ONS for the classification of output areas as one. We had Michael Cross from the Guardian, Free Our Data campaign, went through to Nigel Shadbolt and Tim Berners-Lee for www.data.gov. We had Francis Maud along, DWP last time. Doug's conference board has been chewing this over, and we had some good candidates this year. It was quite tricky, but the winner of the award this year is the Economic and Social Research Council for its increasing focus on retail research and developing training and quantitative skills. And we have a brief citation which I will read out to you. During the last 2 decades, retail companies have become very data rich. Businesses which provide a wide range of services to millions of customers every day make use of data from many different sources, especially government, to make decisions about their operations and future investments. Many have also accumulated large files of information to better understand customers, their transactions and locations. However, until recently, there's only been modest interest and support for academic research in this area. The SRC has now taken very significant steps to change this, as we've heard earlier this afternoon, with a series of initiatives to increase the academic focus on retail research and also to develop training and quantitative skills. Members of the Demographics User Group warmly welcome these developments, which will increase understanding, trigger innovation, improve services to customers, and promote efficiency and growth. And we have an award. In fact, it's the same award we give each year. We bought a job lot of these several years ago. So on behalf of the SRC, a member of the SRC's board, Professor Dave Martin, I understand we'll receive Charles Booth's Map of London. Shall we stand in front of the screen there, Dave? I've learned to obey the photographer's instructions. This is good. Okay, thanks very much indeed. I'll take it back for the moment.
to use it next year.
Also, this year we have a supplementary award. And we thought that it's a good thing to give an award for progress in our area, but we particularly wanted to make a personal award. And this year it is to Professor Martin Callingham, formerly of Whitbread and now of Birkbeck College, London. Martin, do start coming forward, won't you? And the citation here is in recognition of his role in encouraging the formation of Doug in 1998 when Martin was Group Market Research Director at Whitbread. His immense contribution since, including training. Martin has taught a course on how analysts can influence decision makers, and how many have we done, Martin? 5,000. About 5,000. I think we're up to more than 15, towards 20 times that Martin has run this course for, and what a good topic as well, how analysts can influence decision makers. So his contribution including training, playing with data. I enjoyed Sharon's mention of playing with data. I think it's absolutely vital, and Martin mentions that, and providing an endless stream of new ideas. So it's really nice to be able to give Martin a chance to move that. Not the same one, I hasten to add. There's no sleight of hand round the back here.
It's not the same as last year, then.
So, is it the right way up? I think Jan will say move across again. We'll get David in there.
No, you won't.
We'll take that back.
Thank you very much.
Right, that is it, except for one thing, and I was going to echo what Alistair said. The reason that we have these meetings, and this is the 10th one now, and that they've been so successful, is of course in part because of all of those people who've become involved, and especially the speakers. But most of all, it's Keith Dugmore who has made it what it is, who has advanced the cause of demographics and business in many different ways over the years. Keith, I think I would like to say thank you to you, and I invite the entire audience to join with me in thanking Keith for all of it. It is now precisely 5 o'clock, brilliant chairmanship, and we are free to go and have a drink, but only if you fill the forms in and you leave them outside. I shall be watching. Thanks very much, everybody.